Hi, everyone. It's Matt, and I am the youth and family pastor at Cornerstone Church in Marshfield. I'm here today with your Cornerstone Connection, a daily devotional. I want to begin our day here by reading for you from Psalm 29, okay? And this is a beautiful psalm. I might have some comments as we go through this psalm, but I certainly have something to share after we get through that psalm that has really been I don't know, it's one of those things where it's like, man, the Lord must be wanting to speak this to me lately because it keeps coming up. And so I will share that with you afterwards. But we're in Psalm 29. It's called Ascribe to the Lord Glory. It's a psalm of David. So if you want to join me there, I'm going to read it all the way through. Here's what David writes. He writes, Ascribe to the Lord. So this is the idea of um, giving God the attributes, speaking God the attributes that he already has. And we need to not just um, uh, ascribe to the Lord certain things or attribute certain things to the Lord because it is true of him for his sake necessarily, but it's really for our sake to remember who God is, and therefore, who am I? Okay, so here we go. Ascribe to the Lord, attribute to the Lord, O heavenly beings. Ascribe to the Lord glory and strength. Ascribe to the Lord the glory that is due his name. Worship the Lord in the splendor of holiness. And then listen to some of these things David says. The voice of the Lord is over the waters. The God of glory thunders. The Lord over many waters. The voice of the Lord is powerful. The voice of the Lord is full of majesty. You see how David is reminding himself and the readers of the greatness and the grandeur of God. Verse 5. The voice of the Lord breaks the cedars. The Lord breaks the cedars of Lebanon. He makes Lebanon to skip like a calf and Syrian like a young wild ox. So there's great power in the voice of God. Verse 7. The voice of the Lord flashes forth flames of fire. The voice of the Lord shakes the wilderness. The Lord shakes the wilderness of Kadesh. More power, right? The voice of the Lord, now listen to this. The voice of the Lord makes the deer give birth. So we go from this powerful description and illustration of what the voice of God can do and the shaking of the wilderness and the breaking of the cedars to the voice of the Lord in a tender way and yet still a powerful way makes the deer give birth. And then he goes on, and it strips the forest bare. And in his temple, David writes, all cry glory. It reminds me, if you've ever read Isaiah 6 and Isaiah's vision of the Lord in his temple and his glory filling the whole temple and all the seraphims just shouting, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. It's incredible, right? Okay, verse 10, he concludes with verse 10 and 11. David writes, the Lord sits enthroned over the flood. The Lord sits enthroned as king forever. May the Lord give strength to his people. May the Lord bless his people with peace. What a beautiful psalm. And friends, again, there's something that has continued to just be put in front of me lately, and I believe just by the Lord and things I listen to or read or whatever, and it's like God saying, Matt, make sure you get this. And it's this idea, and David does this beautifully, it's this idea that we need to look at God with the proper perspective. Meaning we need to see God for who he is, his greatness, his power, his strength, his glory, and yet also his tenderness, his mercy, his grace, all of that. We need to have an accurate picture of who God is. Because then it helps us to have an accurate picture of who we are. So that's number one. But number two is this. When you and I have the proper perspective, we have the accurate picture of who God is, something happens. Psychologists will say this. When we have, when we give ourselves to an image or an illustration that inspires awe, where we go, oh, that's awesome and wonderful and so much greater and bigger and more powerful than I am, something happens within us. As Brant Hansen, one of my favorite Christian podcasters, says, he says, there is a clarity that comes with being in awe. There's a clarity. We see God clearly for who he is. We see clearly who we are. And being that God is not just great and powerful, but he's good. He has my best in mind at all times. What that does for me is that if I have the proper image of God and who he is and that he is good and he is for me, as it says, as David says at the end of the psalm, the Lord blesses his people with strength. He blesses his people with peace. Friends, as we walk away from the Cornerstone Connection today, my hope is that we allow Psalms like Psalm 29 to paint for us the accurate picture of who God is and therefore who we are, that he is in control, that he loves us, that he is for us. And because of that, we can be at peace. Because of that, we don't have to freak out. We don't have to be afraid. We don't have to be scared because we have a good God who is all of those things that David just said, and we can trust in him, and he is for us. Believe that today, friends. We'll see you next time on the Cornerstone Connection.